Okay, today we are going over section 2.1 in your book, and we are talking about organisms and their environment. The chapter is Principles of Ecology, so we're talking about ecology. We're starting the section that deals with ecology, but today we're going to talk about organisms. What is an organism?
Any living thing.
Living thing. Good job. All right, so let's get into this section. Inside this section, first thing we're going to do is answer the question, what is ecology? Then we're going to talk about the 5 levels of organization. And lastly, we are going to talk about some living relationships. All right, organisms obviously rely on other types of organisms and non-living things, and we're going to talk about that today. What is ecology? Question number 1. Anybody know what ecology is? Or what it involves?
Organisms and the environment.
Okay, you're studying organisms and the environment. I heard something in the back there. What was that? Ecosystems. Yes, that's a part of it. And we're going to talk about all of that today. Ecology is the systematic study of organisms. That's the word you said. And their interactions with the environment. That's the other word that you said. Good stuff. So organisms and their interactions with the environment. It reveals the relationship between living and non-living parts of the environment. Do we depend on non-living things?
Yes.
What are some non-living things that we need?
Car.
A car? Okay.
Fire.
Fire? Okay. Food, and some of that is non-living. Some of it is living. Or was living. Hopefully we're not eating live dogs or something. That would be kind of... Okay, let's move on. All right, so we're still talking about what ecology is. It is multidisciplinary. What do we mean by that? Well, it combines a number of different fields: geology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and a number of others. There's so many different things that you can study in ecology. At Andrews University, one of the professors there, the ecology professor there, was doing some mathematical modeling. And what he was doing on Protection Island, he was looking at the seagulls. And he came up with a mathematical model to describe the pattern of movement that the seagulls on Protection Island have during the day. So he combined math with biology and a number of different things to come up with this model. So it's very multidisciplinary. Organisms cannot exist in isolation. They depend on each other for survival. We need other organisms. We eat plants, we eat fruits, we eat vegetables, and so on. And without those things, we wouldn't live optimally. All right, so we depend on each other for survival, and they also depend on non-living things. We're going to talk about the non-living things first, and then we're going to talk about the living things. So the non-living environment, we call these abiotic factors. Abiotic factors. What would be the opposite of abiotic factors? Biotic factors. So abiotic factors are all of the non-living parts of the environment. Some examples of those would be rocks, sand, water, rainfall, sunlight, buildings. I mean, you can think about so many different abiotic factors. And then there are living things, the living environment, and like was said before, we call those biotic factors. And those are all of the living things that inhabit an environment. And examples of those would be other animals, plants, insects, anything that is alive. All right, in ecology, there are different levels at which you can study. And we're going to know these levels by the end of this class period so that you don't have to study it much when you leave. You're still going to study it because we have a test coming up on next week, Monday, so you want to know those things. The first level is the level of organism. What is the first level?
Organism.
Okay. Second level is the level of population. What's the second level?
Population.
All right. The third level is what?
Community.
And the fourth level would be?
Ecosystem.
And the last level would be?
Biosphere.
Biosphere. So we have organisms, population, ecosystem, communities, ecosystem. All right, so the 5 levels are organisms, populations, communities, ecosystems, and biosphere. And we're going to know that today without having to look at it again, and we're still going to know it. We're still going to look at it again, but we're going to know it now. All right? Number 1 is what? Organisms. 2.
Population.
3.
Community.
4.
Ecosystem.
5.
Biosphere.
Okay, we're going to do it again. We're going to do it 2 more times, and then we're going to take it off the screen. We're going to do it without looking. Can we do that?
Yep.
No? We're going to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 1 more time to do it while looking, and then the next time without looking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, sweet. You guys got it, and I hope you'll have it for the rest of the year. At the end of next year, I'm going to ask you this question again, and you guys are going to say it just as well, right? You sound afraid. All right, so we're going to go through each of these levels. The first one, the organism, we don't have to say much about that. We know what an organism is. What is an organism? Living thing. Any living thing. All living things are organisms. So we're not going to talk about that because we spent an entire chapter dealing with organisms. But we are going to start by talking about populations. A population is a group of organisms that live together and interbreed, living in the same place at the same time. If they interbreed, what does that mean? They are of the same what? Species. All right? So in other words, we can summarize this by saying same species, same place, same time. All right? When we're talking about populations, same species, same place, and same time. Same what? Species. Same place. And time. All right, sweet. So you got that. Same species, same place, same time. And how they share their resources determines how far apart they live and how big the population can get. For example, you guys, are you all the same species? Hopefully, right? Sometimes we wonder a little bit. But you guys are all the same species. Where do you live? Well, where do you live for the most part of the year? Right here, right? You guys are stuck here whether you like it or not. All right, so you guys live here. We can talk about the population of glass students. They're not interbreeding, hopefully. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. All right, same species. Same species. You are the same species. I was going to say something again, but I shouldn't say that either. All right, so same species. You're living in the same place and the same time. And depending on how you share your resources is going to determine how big the population can get. Think about it. You live in dorm rooms, right? For the most part, most of you. Okay, you live in dorm rooms. How many people live in each dorm room? 2, right? What if you had like 6 people in one dorm room? How would that be? It would be a little crowded, right? There's not enough resources in a little room. All right? So the maximum you would want to have in a room would be 2. I've heard of times here in the past where they've had like 3 and 4 people in one room because the numbers were so high. That would be quite awkward, I think. But anywho, you guys 2 in a room, and how you share your resources would determine how close you can live together, how many of you can be in one room, depending on the size of the room and the availability of resources, and so on. Does that make sense? Yep. Yes, okay, sweet. After population, we go to communities. A community is made up of several populations that interact. Several populations mean we have different species. So our summary of communities can be different species, same place, and same time. Almost kind of like the populations, but we're dealing with multiple populations. So different species, same place, same time. You might want to write that in your notes just to kind of prompt you on that. Now, when you have a community of organisms, different populations, if there's a change in one population, that can cause a change in another population. If you have one population that, for example, feeds on another population, if the prey, the number of prey goes down, then the number of predators, what will happen to them? That's going to go down also, right? If there's less to feed, there's less to feed on, less resources, you're going to have less of the predators. So the next level up would be the level of ecosystem. And an ecosystem is made up of a collection of interactions among the populations in a community, and this is the important distinction, and they're abiotic factors. So this is the first place, the first level that we're taking into consideration the non-living things. Okay, so up to now we've been dealing with living things. Now at the level of the ecosystem, we're also taking into consideration the environment, the non-living parts of the environment. And there are three types of ecosystems. Number one, we have terrestrial. What does that mean? Terrestrial, not extraterrestrial. What does terrestrial mean? Anybody knows? What does that refer to? On land. Okay, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about terrestrial. Then we have fresh water. And we also have the third, which would be salt water. And you can put next to salt water, marine. That's the same thing. A saltwater ecosystem is a marine environment. Okay, so we're talking about the oceans and so on. What's the last level up? Biosphere. So let's go to the biosphere and talk about that a little bit. The biosphere is the entire portion of Earth that supports life. How big is that portion? That portion extends from the bottom of the ocean. We have organisms that can live at the bottom of the ocean to high in the atmosphere. Is that a big distance? Oh yeah, that's a significant amount of space. However, here we have the globe, here we have the Earth. And if we were to take this Earth and shrink it down to the size of an apple, the biosphere would only represent the size of the peel of the apple. So yes, it is big, but relatively speaking, when you take the whole Earth into consideration, it's not that big. All right, so that is the biosphere. So what are the 5 levels again? Number 1? You guys forgot already? Come on. It's been like 15 minutes. Let's try that again. Number 1.
Organism.
2.
Population.
3.
Community.
4.
Ecosystem.
And?
Biosphere.
All right, sweet. So those are the 5 levels. You should be able to identify the different levels. There'll be a number of questions on the test referring to these different levels. So make sure to understand the differences.